Welcome to this safe and beautiful space. We want to offer profound gratitude to Ed Sunday Winters and the UCC Church for providing this sanctuary.
Thank you, Asad, for the very kind introduction, and thank you to War on Want for bringing us all together. As a Palestinian, I must say the past 4 months have been horrific, and the only way we have survived is through being in spaces like this with comrades. So thank you all so much for being here. I was telling Asad earlier, I haven't performed for 4 months. I haven't read a single poem because it's been very, very difficult to try and keep it together in public. But War on Want was my first home when I arrived in this country. It was one of the only organizations that was doing boycott, divestments, and sanctions work publicly. So I cannot refuse it when Asad asks me to perform a poem. I just hope I'm able to hold it. But if I don't hold it together, I know we're in England and crying is not allowed. But, you know, try, give the person next to you a hug. It's okay to have feelings. We're allowed to. And I'll start with a poem by Rifat al-Arir, who was assassinated by Israel in the latest acts of genocide. If I must die, you must live. If I must die, you must live to tell my story, to sell my things, to buy a piece of cloth and some strings. If I must die, you must live to tell my story, to sell my things, to buy a piece of cloth and some strings, make it white with a long tail. So a child somewhere in Gaza, while looking heaven in the eye, awaiting his dad who left in a blaze, and bid no farewell, not even to his flesh, not even to himself, sees the kite, my kite, that you made flying up above, and thinks for a moment an angel is there, bringing back love. If I must die, let it bring hope. If I must die, let it be a tale. Thank you. And I think it's only appropriate to do my own poem, We Teach Life. So here we go. Today my body was a TV'd massacre. Today My body was a TV'd massacre that had to fit into sound bites and word limits. Today, my body was a TV'd massacre that had to fit into sound bites and word limits, filled enough with statistics to counter measured response, so I perfected my English. I learned all my UN resolutions, but still he looked me straight in the eyes and asked me, Ms. Ziada, wouldn't it all be fine if you Palestinians would just stop teaching so much hatred to your children? Pause. I look inside of me for strength to be patient. I look inside of me for strength to be patient, but patience is not at the tip of my tongue as the bombs drop over Gaza. Patience has just escaped me. Pause. Remember to smile. Rafif, remember to smile. You're on camera. Remember to smile. Pause. We teach life, sir. We teach life, sir, after they have occupied the last sky. We teach life, sir, after they have built their settlements and their apartheid walls. After the last skies, we teach life, sir. But today, my body was a TV'd massacre made to fit into sound bites and word limits, and they just want a story, a human story, you see. Every journalist tells me they need a human story. They need a hook. Maybe I can find them a woman who speaks English. Maybe she can be pretty. Maybe she needs medication. Just human stories. Just human stories. Just human stories. And will you condemn? Will you condemn? Will you condemn? How about you? How about you? Do you have enough bone, broken limbs to cover the sun? Hand me over your dead. Hand me over your dead and give me a list of their names, but make sure that it's in 1,200 word limits. And shh, don't mention that word apartheid. Shh, don't talk about that word occupation. We just want human stories, you see. Today, my body was a TV'd massacre made to fit into sound bites and word limits and hook those that are desensitized to terrorist blood, but they felt sorry for the cattle over Gaza, so I give them statistics and UN resolutions, and I speak their language. We condemn, we deplore, we very, very much reject, and we very, very much deplore, and we very, very much condemn, and these are not two equal sides, occupier and occupied, and these are not two equal sides, colonizer and colonized, and I recount 100 dead, 200 dead, 3,000 dead, 100,000 dead, and I recount and I tell our stories, and I learn their UN resolutions. But today, my body was a TV'd massacre to fit into sound bites and word limits, and I wish I could just wail over their bodies. I wish I could just run barefoot in every refugee camp, hold every child, cover their ears, so they wouldn't have to hear the sound of bombing for the rest of their life the way that I do. I wish I could run barefoot in every refugee camp and hold every child, cover their ears, so they wouldn't have to hear the sound of bombing for the rest of their life the way that I do. Because let me just tell you, there's no soundbite. No matter how good my English gets, there's no soundbite. No matter how good my English gets, no soundbite, no soundbite, no soundbite, no soundbite will bring them back to life. And no soundbite will fix this. There's no soundbite that will fix this. We teach life, sir. We teach life, sir. We Palestinians wake up every morning to teach the rest of the world life, sir.
It's a real honor to have the opportunity to introduce our keynote speaker, number one, Hamid Bakir.
Wow, this room is full of love. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Sarah and John. This was the most beautiful song that it lives here. Since my childhood, I know this song and I can sing with it, even though I have the ugliest singing voice. لما بدأ يتثنى. It's a music thing that originates in Andalusia in the 8th century, and it's just a Middle East song that no matter who you are, how old you are, you hear the melody and you start singing along. I'm glad you asked me to introduce it after you played the music. Otherwise, I would have embarrassed myself. This is such an amazing opportunity to talk to you. I am so overwhelmed today with your solidarity. We Palestinians teach life, sir. We wake up every morning to teach the word life, sir. That was my ziyada, Rafif Ziyada. It's a powerful start to our talk. I wanted to thank you first for this uplifting show of solidarity. Thank you to those who organized, to those who arranged the music and the dance later. Thank you to the providers of the space here. Amazing. Thank you to the community for your solidarity over the last 7 months. It's so touching. I hope you enjoyed some of the flavors of the Middle East. We served you the falafel, cooked Gaza style, taught to me by a friend from Gaza, and we served it Gaza style. My talk today is about hope and resilience and culture. And twice I was asked over the last 7 months, how can you be hopeful as the genocide progresses into its 7 months? They've killed 35,000 people, killed 15,000 children, injured over 100,000. They've destroyed 75% of homes, all hospitals, all schools, all universities. They've killed people alive. They buried them alive. They killed people with their hands tied behind their backs. They've killed doctors and professors, teachers. They are mass graves. They've moved humanity's red lines. They doubled down when the International Court of Justice ordered them to stop the genocide. They want to kill hope. They want to kill our hope as Palestinians, and they want to kill the global hope for peace. They want to normalize the genocide so that we are so numb, we are so helpless and hopeless, so when they do it in other places, we will not protest, we will not object. All the time, they've told you that we are doing it in self-defense of the only democracy in the Middle East and the only civilized people in the Middle East. And it's okay. It's okay. I'm good, Bashar. I'm very good, Hamna. I'm very good. Yeah.
We'd love to ask you.
A huge number of us believed them and supported them. We live in a very strange world today, a world where the morally corrupt and the media establishment normalize the genocide and celebrate it. We live in a world where we celebrate apartheid, and we live in a world where those people who celebrate apartheid are vilifying those people who protested. They've moved humanity's red lines, and they crossed the new red lines that they moved. But the mask is down. It's too sad that it took 35,000 lives and 15,000 children. It's too bad, but the mask is down now. We know the truth, and once you know the truth, you cannot unknow it. And once you know the truth, you cannot be neutral. Once we know the truth and we are in neutral, we are standing by the aggressor. We are buying into their agenda. We are complicit to their actions. Apartheid, slavery, domination, and genocide are not compatible with humanity. Sanctity of life, freedom, and liberation are the values for humanity. For over 100 years, the Zionist movement, with its supporters in the West, have started their genocidal campaign against the Palestinians. In 1936, the British colonizers with the Zionist movement crushed the first Palestinian uprising revolt against colonization. In 1948, the Zionists found the state of Israel on 78% of the Palestinian land, expelling 80% of the Palestinian population, 750,000 people into exile. They destroyed 530 Palestinian villages, wiped them off the ground in an attempt to eliminate any evidence of the Palestinian presence on the land. In 1967, they occupied the remaining Palestinian land, 22% of the Palestinian land, and they expelled an additional 380,000 Palestinians into exile. In 1990, 2000, and 2018, Israel crushed the 3 Palestinian uprisings for liberation, peaceful uprising. In 2006, Israel laid siege on Gaza, allowing only sufficient food for minimal calorie intake to maintain life. Israel attacked Gaza in what they called mowing the lawn operations in 2008, 12, 14, 18, 21, and 22. For 8 decades, Israel subjected the Palestinians to the most brutal military occupation and apartheid, a system of humiliation, movement restriction, arbitrary detention and execution, destruction of property, land and water theft for settlers' purposes, state and settler violence, and destruction of the Palestinian environment, all for one single declared purpose and goal, which is eliminate the Palestinian people, the indigenous people of the land, and replace them with settler colonialists. The apartheid system that Israel imposed on the Palestinians is so violent that visiting South African scholars stated that what they had in South Africa was so merciful compared to what Israel is doing to the Palestinians. For 100 years, they tried to kill the Palestinian hope and turning Palestinians into zombie workers for their factories and consumers for their products. I wake up every day in the morning wanting the nightmare to go away. I dream of freedom and liberation. I dream of the end of the Israeli apartheid. I dream of crossing the borders into my home, and the border guy will tell me, welcome home. I dream of traveling to Palestine with my 2 children who are born in Jerusalem, and with the border guy say, welcome home, and still interrogating my children for hours on end to allow them 1 week entry in the land of their birth. I dream of taking a picnic in the beautiful mountains near my family's home and coming home without fear of being shot. I dream of times at night when I go deep asleep when the youngsters in the family go out in town for fun because I'm not worried about their safety when they come home. There's not much to dream of, is it? But I dream that our liberation is within reach for 3 good reasons. One of them is the Palestinian people's love of life and love of land. I also dream of liberation because of the global solidarity with the Palestinian cause like never before in the history of Palestine. And I also find hope in the growing Jewish voices for liberation, Jewish voices for liberation such as Jewish Voice for Peace. Thanks to them and thanks to Jason who's here, who's my friend Jason is going to be talking later. For the last 100 years, the Israeli government again tried all at their disposal to kill Palestinian hope. But our hope grows stronger by the year. We are like the olive trees. You cut them with chainsaws and they grow stronger. They set them on fire, they grow stronger. They uproot them and they reestablish roots. Resilience is why my grandfather refused to leave Palestine in 1967 when the Israeli tanks rolled into Ramallah and started shooting at the place where we lived. My grandfather said, we were refugees once, we will never be refugees again. We die here, or we live here, or we return back to our village, Abbasiyya, which is our village, our native village, where now is in Israel, where we were expelled from. My father lived with hope of returning home to Abbasiyya all his life. A few days before he died, he said to us, and that was last August, by the way, he said to us, by now, I know I'm not returning to Abbasiyya. I hope you and your children will one day. Ben-Gurion, the first Prime Minister of Israel, said upon the establishment of Israel, the old will die and the young will forget. 76 years later, he couldn't be more wrong. Palestinian youth in Palestine and overseas around the world are united in solidarity, joy, and the undying love of Palestine. Gazans rebuilt Gaza every time the Israelis destroyed it, more beautiful and more like home. We Palestinians celebrate our culture as we resist. We celebrate our music, our dance, our food, our architecture, and as we keep resisting. They try to appropriate our culture, our food, our embroidery, and our traditions. But our traditions are born from a connection to the land for hundreds and hundreds of years. You cannot appropriate them, you cannot confiscate those. Global solidarity is what gives me the best hope now, these times. Global solidarity at no time, even in the darkest times of the Palestinian history, was so strong as we see it today. Solidarity in the small towns like around here, in the big cities, in the universities, and in unions and in societal organizations. Palestinians need your voices more than anything else, and they need your voices now more than any other time. People in Gaza hear you, and they hear you very loud, and they gain strength from your voices. I quote a young Palestinian journalist, Bisan, who says in one of her social media posts, I live all my life, she says, in Gaza and never felt hope. It's a magical feeling running in my veins and in my head. I dream I am in Gaza rebuilding my city. These young heroes, she says, in universities in America and around the world are stronger than the last occupation in history. For the first time, as Palestinians, we hear you a voice louder than their voices and even louder than the bombs. Displaced population in Gaza write on their tents messages of gratitude to the students who are raising their voices for them. Please support students. Please support them with all you can because they are the future. They are the future for peace. 3 decades ago, apartheid South Africa ended. And it ended because of the global solidarity of ordinary people who stood up, who had the courage to stand up for humanity. Ordinary people protested and picketed the South Africa embassies everywhere in the world. They boycotted South Africa products. Professors did not work with South Africa University. Sports teams did not play them. Musicians did not tour for them. They isolated them. Global solidarity was the answer then, and it is the answer today. Please march for Palestine. Please stand up for Palestine. Please make it Palestine movement. The US supplies the bombs that rain on Gaza. The US provides the funding and the diplomatic and political protection for Israel to continue its genocidal campaign against the Palestinians. In the US is the solution. Palestinians need your voices against funding Israel, against arming Israel, in order to end the Israeli apartheid and genocide. We need ceasefire to start with, but we need to go further and end the Israeli apartheid. With each life served, Ziada says, the Palestinian poet Mahmoud Darwish says, we have on Palestine land what makes life worth living. Life itself, its continuation and its celebration are the most prized Palestinian values. Life that has been stolen from hundreds of thousands of Palestinians, dignified life that has been denied to millions of us for 10 decades. Whenever we are liberated, we will remember those who stood by us, and we will celebrate our liberation, hopefully, in our homeland of Palestine. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Hannah. I'm going to read a poem by Lena Khalaf Tufaha. Lena lives in Redmond, Washington with her husband and children. She's lived the experience as a first-generation American immigrant and expatriate. Her heritage is Palestinian, Jordanian, and Syrian. She has lived in and traveled across the Arab world, and many of her poems are inspired by the experience of crossing cultural, geographic, and political borders, borders between languages, between the present and the living past. This poem of hers was recently written. It's called Running Orders. They call us now before they drop the bombs. The phone rings, and someone who knows my first name calls and says in perfect Arabic, "This is David." And in my stupor of sonic booms and glass-shattering symphonies still smashing around in my head, I think, do I know any Davids in Gaza? They call us now to say, run. You have 58 seconds from the end of this message. Your house is next. They think of it as some kind of wartime courtesy. It doesn't matter that there is nowhere to run to. It means nothing that the borders are closed and your papers are worthless. And mark you only for a life sentence in this prison by the sea. And the alleyways are narrow, and there are more human lives packed one against the other, more than any other place on earth. Just run. We aren't trying to kill you. It doesn't matter that you can't call us back to tell us the people we claim to want aren't in your house, that there's no one here except you and your children who were cheering for Argentina, sharing the last loaf of bread for this week, counting candles left in case the power goes out. It doesn't matter that you have children. You live in the wrong place, and now is your chance to run to nowhere. It doesn't matter that 58 seconds isn't long enough to find your wedding album, or your son's favorite blanket, or your daughter's almost completed college application, or your shoes, or to gather everyone in the house. It doesn't matter what you had planned. It doesn't matter who you are. Prove you're human. Prove you stand on two legs. Run.
about to play a beautiful lullaby to a young child by Sana Musa, a Palestinian artist who created a music video for YouTube that we're doing a cover of. I've merged some biographical material here to give you background for this piece. Sana Musa is a singer and songwriter who has been singing on her own potent brand of Palestinian classical and folk music with influences originating from the collective memory of the Palestinian people. Sana has unveiled raw musical materials, dug for lyrics, songs and stories in the hidden Palestinian heritage, and remolded it into her own distinctive style. Musa, for her 2016 album Ishraq Reminiscence, incorporated the songs and sounds of a generation of women who witnessed the Nakba. Inspired by a song her grandmother used to sing to her as a child, she wanted to find out if other women knew those songs. The rich repertoire she uncovered was mainly sung in women-only settings during weddings, harvest seasons, or while going to the spring or stream for water or washing clothes, and it was also used to mark joy, births, revolutions, and departure. You can find the entire album on YouTube, and I recommend that you look for that along with her setting for this beautiful lullaby called Sama Lullaby. John's going to sing the lyrics in Arabic, and Hamid's going to explain just a little bit about the lyrics for us. They were talking about this late at night, so maybe Hamid, if you could just do that, and then we'll get ready to play.
Well, it's a mother singing to her baby. Oh, a mom singing to her baby, hush, hush, baby, hush. Salma, the baby, is. So it brings in images of pigeons and beautiful deer and beautiful eyes and all the surroundings. And then finally she says, she's not asleep. Salma is asleep. Salma.
So we're putting this out there, thanks Hamid, as kind of this beautiful song for children. Just seems fitting.
It's an honor to introduce our second keynote speaker, Jason Hirsch, who is an academic, an author, and a tireless activist with Jewish Voice for Peace, Vermont, New Hampshire, and nationally. Thank you, Jason.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me? Yeah? Okay. Thank you. Is this better? Is this better? Yeah. Okay. Resounding. Great. Thank you to our organizers for hosting this beautiful event today and for inviting me to take part. For the community for hosting us and for coming to be with us, and to Hamed as well for inviting me to be a part too. Like Hamed, I too grew up eating falafel and hummus. I ate these foods as a white Jew in Toronto. I was taught that these were also my foods, alongside the matzo ball soup and the goose fat and the gefilte fish of my ancestors in Eastern Europe. I was taught that falafel and hummus were my foods too because they were Israeli foods. But if they had become the foods of my people, it was along a very different pathway than the one by which they became Hamed's. His people have been growing and preparing and eating these foods for generations. And unless we think that recipes like these were prepared by my long ago ancestors in 500 BCE, when Jewish people last lived in that land, then I came to call these foods mine only by theft. I don't think of them as my foods any longer. My most sincere experience with what I now think of as Palestinian food came in a bookstore in Toronto one weekend afternoon. I saw a Palestinian cookbook on the shelf, picked it up with interest and leafed through it. Something caught in my throat and I nearly broke down in the middle of that shop in Kensington Market, the old Jewish quarter of Toronto near where my grandparents grew up. I was washed over by a staggering sense of loss. Loss of family, loss of these foods that, had they not been appropriated by my people, could have been shared with me willingly as an exchange among ancient cousins, maybe even as a welcome home after centuries apart. When I imagined receiving these foods in that way, they taste to my mind of lemon and garlic, but also of possibility, of humanity and hope. Hamed spoke to us about hope, and so will I. He spoke of Palestinian hope, and I will speak of Jewish hope, but not to try to show both sides. I will speak from the position of the oppressor, by which I mean the position with most of the power in a system of domination. What it means to me to speak from this position is, among other things, to recognize that a system of domination benefits none of the parties involved, and that in order for my people to have any real chance at safety and freedom, Hamed's people must have them as well. And so I will speak about Jewish hope in two registers. One, the hope of Zionism, which I will present as a false hope for my people, as much as it has been a disaster for Hamad's. And I will also speak about an older kind of Jewish hope that is, I think, far more hopeful, and one that I and my fellows in Jewish Voice for Peace try to revive today. Ever since my people was exiled from the lands that are today Israel and Palestine nearly 2,000 years ago, our poetry and liturgy have been replete with yearning and hope to return. But for most of this time, the end of exile meant not just physically going to the Holy Land, but an end to persecution. Jews would return to the land our prophets told us in the time of the Messiah, when a moral revolution would also bring an end to all war. Over these centuries, Jews did return on pilgrimage, sometimes to stay, but none of this was considered an end to the exile. For all these years, Zion was a spiritual place for Jews as much as a physical one. Now, all this changed. Oh, there we go. I'm sorry. All this changed at the advent of modern Zionism in the late 1800s. Zionism was a secular movement trying to create a political solution now to the problem of anti-Semitism in Europe. It married the ancient vision of return to the Holy Land with the emerging European form of the nation-state, where the Jewish people would bring about our own messianic deliverance through creating our own state. In doing that, Zionism tied the hope of my people to the nation-state's kind of hoping as well. And what kind of hoping is that? The hope of the state is that through growing its economy ever larger and supporting the strength of its army, progress and enlightenment will follow and then spread to the whole world. We know how this kind of hoping turns out. The bright promises obscure its dark underbelly. America is the land of the free, so long as you don't look at the enslavement that built its riches, and on like this. It is a counterfeit hope that motivates by distraction as much as by dream. In Zionism, much of my people has been swept up in this kind of hoping. We have hitched our sense of our future to a colonial ideal. We have turned from the hope of our prophets to the false god of territorial control. But there is another way. A rabbi and professor of religious studies at Dartmouth College named Shaul Magid argues for what he calls the necessity of exile. The truth of this moment in history, Magid says, is that the messianic time has not arrived yet. We are still in exile as Jews because human beings, or at least the peoples of Europe, have not yet learned to organize ourselves without violence. We are not there yet. And this not yet, he says, is a state that we must embrace. Because if we are not there yet, we must continue to hope and work and pray to get there. We cannot merely declare it into being, as the state does. If we do try to just declare it into being, it may be that all we are really doing is turning away. Consider instead the vision of the Bund, a prominent Jewish socialist political party in Eastern Europe that emerged at the same time as Zionism. They were avowedly opposed to Zionism because they didn't think that a new state was a solution to the problem of anti-Semitism. For them, the state was the problem. To them, Zionism was just running away from the problem and then reimposing it on someone else. Their answer instead was the socialist revolution, overthrowing the state that oppressed them and oppressed women and workers and on and on. And like other socialists, they understood that this kind of liberation could only be realized by putting one foot in front of the other, by real struggle and real solidarity in the here and now. There could be no pretending that one was where one was not. So what hope is there in this particular kind of struggle? Let me turn for that to one more Jewish thinker, one who weaves the socialist work of here and now with the spiritual yearning of that older Jewish tradition. Walter Benjamin is sometimes called a mystical Marxist, a theorist of liberation who also draws from the Kabbalah, the ancient Jewish mysticism. And Benjamin writes that we live two historical timelines simultaneously. One material, and the other messianic. The material timeline tracks the world that we can see and touch. On this timeline, we can intervene, and we can change the course of history. The messianic timeline instead tracks the coming of a moral revolution, whose progress is almost beyond our grasp. When we create a more just world here on the material plane, he says, it does hasten the messianic arrival, but just not in a way that we can entirely perceive or control. But there are some moments, he says, where the two timelines touch, where we can feel the feelings of salvation here in our ordinary lives. I believe Christians call this the moment of grace. In some moments of love or insight or deep solidarity, we can feel that other world on its way. These moments are like flashes of lightning illuminating a dark woods in a stormy night. We can use them to guide our way. In the kind of hope offered by the state, though, these two timelines are collapsed into each other. We see it happening in one little conjunction, in the words of the scientist and the policy technician. Yet. We haven't found the cure yet. We haven't ended poverty yet. There's a second half of each of these sentences that is implied but never said. We haven't yet, but surely we will. A mastery over nature is promised. It's a kind of hoping that is sure it is already on the road to triumph. And so any little dark spot in its underbelly, a sweatshop here, an ethnic cleansing there, can't be allowed to get in the way of its progress. This is the kind of hope offered by the Jewish state as an answer to the age-old problem of the persecution of the Jews in Europe. The state itself is presented as the answer to all of our ancient hoping. When Zionism came to dominate Jewish discourse, really just through the last 50 years, it pushed out these older kinds of messianic hope. It covered over the humility of recognizing all that is broken in our world, what is not yet whole. That not yet that says that deliverance may not be entirely within our control. But this older kind of hoping leaves space for us to add another conjunction. We must work together, as the socialist said, to hasten the coming of deliverance, nevertheless. In Zionism, many of my people have forgotten this older kind of hoping. Israel has become the only hope. I hold this in my heart when I talk to Zionist Jews. And I offer it to you today in response to one of Hamed's questions to me in preparation for today's event. How, he asked, can we respond to the accusation of anti-Semitism leveled against efforts to stop this genocide, to stop the occupation, to stop apartheid? And I will say this. The accusation may be leveled so freely and so recklessly by some Zionist Jews, and with so little regard for Palestinian life, because Zionism has become their only hope. So when others are perceived to be attacking Israel, even only with words or cardboard signs or tents on a university lawn, it may be taken as an attack on the very hope that there could ever be safety for Jews at all. In that sense, what I advise is to pair our calls for divestment from the false promises of Zionism with investments in another way. To speak clearly and continually that this movement for a free Palestine does not call for attack against or expulsion of Jews, to call Zionist Jews toward a better future, a future that, yes, does include them, but must include Palestinians as well. The traumatized Jewish psyche is convinced that it cannot trust its safety to anyone else, because at least in the European Jewish memory, the Christian neighbors of Jews have betrayed them too many times before. This is a fear that on some level I carry in my bones as well. And so there is this important role for white people in the work of unwinding Zionism, to welcome Jews into a wider and more encompassing solidarity, to show that the age-old fear is no longer needed, that we do not need to hide behind a wall. Now, some might find this kind of work of inclusion excessive or indulgent or unreasonable, like treating Zionism with kid gloves while it terrorizes the neighborhood? And I would say, yes, sometimes. Let us keep Palestine at the center. Let us never stop speaking its plight or celebrating its culture, and let us continue to apply pressure unremittingly to Israel and its funders. And yet still, the radical educational theorist Paulo Freire teaches that the oppressor too must be freed. In order to maintain their position of power, they must push away some part of their humanity to allow them not to see the damage that they cause. By definition, the oppressor is locked in a mentality of exclusion from which they too must go free. So let us carry on divesting ourselves from the hope of the state that promises deliverance through mastery while trampling countless people and other beings underfoot. Let us continue to support the courageous students in this country now facing the wrath of the police state here, as they demand their universities divest from the arms manufacturers who profit from a genocide. As individuals, let us continue to divest our consumer dollars from Israel, to pressure it, as we did for South Africa, into acting right. But as we do, let us invest too, in Palestinian farmers and their beautiful food, in Palestinian life and love of life, and in a different future than the one that Jews remember from Christian Europe and fear repeating, one that is liberatory for all. As a Jewish person, I must make a choice between these two kinds of hoping. One that promises me my deliverance, but denies the rights of others. Or one that accepts my place in a broken world and asks what I can do next to help repair it. And in just the same way, I must choose between two ways of eating Palestinian food. I can ignore how my people has come to have this food and blithely eat my Israeli-made hummus and falafel. Or I can choose to see how my people appropriated them and give up any claim. There is grief then that I must face and loss. But these painful feelings are feelings of the return of some exiled part of my humanity. And if I do that, then there come moments every once in a while when a Palestinian man offers me this food willingly. Despite all, welcomes me to his table and serves me his ancestral foods. And in those moments, though they may be fleeting and few, the food tastes so much sweeter. Such a moment becomes then a moment of grace, of deliverance, a moment when I can feel the world to come here and now already, in the midst of a darkness I can hardly fathom, an arrival of a light that I can hardly fathom as well. Thank you. Before I leave you to some more beautiful music, I've been asked to share some action steps with you so we can all take these steps. Now, you don't need to remember this. I'm reading from a handout that I prepared that will be where, Susan, Robin? Where will it be? Where are the handouts going to be?
Scott.
Where are the handouts? Where will they be?
I just gave the last one out.
Okay. So then you...
But you have a QR code on it, right?
Yeah, so then two things. Do remember this. And second, I will leave this sheet that I have at the very back, and there are at least a couple of QR codes and websites where you can write things down on your way out. So I'll leave it right at the back there. Scott, can you wave? Great. Okay, I'll leave it right there. So I want to give you just a few ways of taking action. I'd suggest choose one or two that really appeal to you, that feel like your way. Visit the student encampments to show your support. They need to feel that from us. Sterling is just up the road. You can go and visit them. If you fancy a longer trip, UVM or Dartmouth, do what you can to check in with people locally to see what the status is of the risk and what they may need in terms of supplies brought in. Boycott Israeli goods and buy Palestinian ones. You can look for a Made in Israel label on products that you buy. You can also follow Palestinian-led guidance on boycott campaigns from the BDS movement. And I have a website here on the sheet, which will be at the back, where you can see that. You can also buy Palestinian olive oil and dates from the Vermont Just Food Hub here in central Vermont. We're in the Northeast Kingdom now, I apologize. In central Vermont. And a small portion of their sales will come back to Jewish Voice for Peace to support our work as well as the revenue going to the Palestinian farmers. Next, in Montpelier in central Vermont, Jewish Voice for Peace hosts a weekly vigil attended by many of our allies to keep everyone's eyes on Rafah in the middle of town at State and Main Street. You can find us there every Tuesday from 4:30 to 5:30. Just show up, you won't miss us. That's the point. Next, call our congressional representatives. We in Vermont have congressional representatives who have come out for ceasefire. We need to call them to thank them, to let them know that these bold stands that they have taken can come with a political reward from our constituency and not with a cost. And we need to urge them to continue to go further, to continue to vote against more funding for Israel's genocide. Lastly, you can get your town or your community organization to sign on to the Apartheid-Free Communities Pledge. This is a Quaker initiative that has been signed by communities all around the country. I have a website here where you can see the pledge and take action steps. You can also talk with Deborah Stolaroff, one of my comrades in Jewish Voice for Peace. Deborah, you want to give a little wave? Deborah is an organizer with this campaign, and if you're interested in this, it's a powerful statement of solidarity to the world. The farther we can spread it, the better, and Deborah can help you find out how your organization, large or small, can get involved. So those 5 forms of action. If you want to get more involved, engage, know what's going on, I've also given QR codes here for 2 local groups. One is Vermonters for Justice in Palestine, through whom you'll get connected to all the goings-on in the coming weeks and months. May it all need to end soon. And also for Jewish Voice for Peace, if you're Jewish or a non-Jewish person who feels especially motivated by this Jewish anti-Zionist approach, you're welcome to join us as well, or both. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Jason. Our next speaker is a visitor to the kingdom. Dr. Ahlam Abu Awad is a Palestinian American who earned her PhD in environmental health sciences. She is currently a postdoctoral fellow at the Geisel, am I saying that right? That School of Medicine at Dartmouth, and a member of Upper Valley for Palestine. In her spare time, she writes heart-rending poetry about her homeland, and she will share 2 of those poems with us this afternoon. Before she comes up, I just want to say that for those of you who are eager to find out more, to learn more, there is somewhere floating around here a packet of online resources that you can access beyond the mainstream media, which does a truly dreadful job of reporting anything from Israel, Palestine, and specifically Gaza. So please keep reading. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Susan, for that wonderful introduction. Thank you all. This is better. Thank you all for having me. Thank you, Hamed and Pat, for inviting me to come read my poetry. I'm a scientist, but I grew up creating art and writing poetry, but I haven't done it in years. And what's happening today really inspired me to stand up and speak out in many different avenues, and poetry is one medium. So my first poem is entitled Freedom. How much for freedom must we pay? Must we keep our humanity at bay? Why shroud the truth in deceit's heavy cloak when freedom's value should be bespoke? What price for freedom do we weigh? Is it the souls of black and brown, they say? Generations shattered, hearts torn apart. Can any wealth heal such a broken heart? If freedom's price we choose not to heed, how will the war machine feed its greed? Why claim every life is treasured, adored, while some are trapped in the jar of war? Thank you. My second poem is called View of Gaza. I used to fly. I would fly so high that the olive trees were below me. I would fly over the land and sea. I used to fly free. As the years went by, the land filled with sadness, people aching, but not succumbing to madness. As the years went by, I saw renewed happiness. Until my wings were clipped, I too became trapped, yanked from the sky and strapped, until my wings were clipped and no longer seemed intact. The trees are now gone, bulldozed and bombed with the rest of the land. Pain and grief was more than I thought I could withstand. The trees are now gone, but the hope is still in hand. We thought we could no longer fly, but they could never break our spirit. For in every one of us, resilience is inherent. We thought we could no longer fly, but for us, there is no limit. Thank you.
Thank you. Several people have spoken already today of the gift that college and university students have given us in this moment of horror, for hope, to look ahead, to look beyond the present catastrophes. Just in the last several days, it became clear that we would have some guests among those students who have been either at or are staying in encampments. And the first of those is Avani Pisapati, who has spent some time at the Middlebury encampment. And Avani, are you here? Oh, sorry, thank you.
Hello. Hi. Thanks for being here. I'm just going to read some notes from the encampment that I think are the most important updates. So the Middlebury encampment is entering day 7 of their encampment. They have about 200 students that are in about 50 tents. They've been organizing themselves into different committees. They have committee leaders, and they also have pods. And they're camped out on the lawn where the commencement will take place. So when asked about how long the students will be there, some students firmly said that they're going to be there until their 5 demands are met. So I'm going to read those demands for you. So their first demand is divestment and financial transparency, to divest the Middlebury Endowment of all holdings in companies that profit from or engage in Israel's ongoing military campaign, occupation, and apartheid policies. Commit to full financial transparency on all its current and future investments. The second demand is freedom of expression and protester amnesty. As part of Middlebury's commitment to free speech, enshrine in policy that faculty, students, and staff are able to freely express support for Palestinian liberation without fear of institutional retaliation. extend full amnesty to all protesters who have expressed themselves on Palestinian liberation, commit to maintaining the employment of all college employees involved in pro-Palestine political expression. The third demand is academic and cultural boycott, end the recruitment of unvetted professors through the Israel Institute, refrain from any form of academic or cultural association with Israeli institutions and businesses, in line with the Palestinian campaign for the academic and cultural boycott of Israel. Their fourth demand is Palestinian affiliations. Cultivate direct affiliations with Palestinian academic and cultural institutions without requiring them to partner with Israel counterparts. Just like with students from other war-torn areas, commit to helping displaced Gazan students study at Middlebury. And the last demand is end the silence. End Middlebury College's silence by releasing a public statement calling for an immediate and permanent ceasefire in Gaza and condemning Israel's genocidal campaign against the Palestinian people. So from my understanding, the students are making progress in their negotiations with the administration. However, none of the demands have been officially met yet, so they're asking for increased pressure on the administration from the surrounding Vermont community. So if you know individuals or organizations or businesses who would be willing to support these demands, you can add your contact info to this sheet that I'll pass around, and I will contact you for more information on that. And lastly, they're saying that they're not in need of any more donations, like any more money, and they request that everybody direct their money to Direct Gazan Aid. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sarah Kennedy. I'm currently a junior at Sterling College up on the hill in Craftsbury. This is Amelia. This is Charlie. We established our encampment Sunday night, first and foremost to express our outrage and grief over the ongoing genocide of Palestinians, and also in solidarity with the growing number of student encampments around the country and the oppressive resistance that they face. The community support so far has been incredible, and we thank you all for it. We are being well taken care of, and we have no specific needs, like physically, to ask of you all, and that is a joy to say. We are currently in conversations with our president, Scott Thomas, and other members of the leadership team. They've been spending a lot of time telling us that they support us without any verbal or actionable confirmation that they will work to meet our demands. Sterling's mission and reputation is one of environmental and social action and change. In the past, they have been a role model for other schools, like in their complete divestment from fossil fuels some years back. They were the first in Vermont to do so. We know that they understand the power of divestment. Our list of student demands sounds very similar to Middlebury's. Lots of schools are using the same language in how we talk about this. But just to summarize, financial transparency and divestment from the occupation, an institutional call for ceasefire and a free Palestine, cultivation of Palestinian affiliations, an academic and cultural boycott, and protester amnesty. As Ahmed said, global solidarity is the answer, and I believe that global solidarity begins in our own immediate communities, no matter how small. To support us, call Scott Thomas and urge him to adhere to student demands and to stop dragging his feet. You can find his number on the Sterling College website. Also, come out and say hi. Show our school that this community backs its students and will rally behind them. If any of you are interested in offering any workshops or talks at the encampment, it could be anything, come help us occupy some time and space. In that way, we'd be grateful to have you. Thank you for inviting us and for listening.
We had hoped there might be some time for questions and answers. We could continue all afternoon to learn more and celebrate more together. I'd like to invite the audience members to approach the speakers, the poets, the musicians, everyone who's contributed here today, and have your own conversations and Q&A as led. So we have time for one more beautiful musical piece, and thank you to our musicians for their leadership and talent. And I believe Sarah is going to give a bit of an explanation about the next piece and moving into the Debka music.
Yes. Yeah, so actually I want to encourage everybody to hang around and participate in the Debka and of course Maria's songs and all of that. It's meant to be as a community experience. If anybody did bring an instrument, I actually have sheet music here. It's pretty easy. It can be hummed. I'm going to lead it on the fiddle. I'm going to play it for you right now, just one time through so that you can hear what the music will sound like. We're going to play one last tune,
Fancy.